Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us again for Tuesdays with CKLS. This month, we are continuing our discussion on book challenges and reconsideration for libraries. We did this in January, and we will post the link for January's session in the chat again for those that are just joining us. But we have focused mostly on schools, and this discussion probably will still focus on schools because that's where the challenges are coming up. But we're going to talk about some real examples for schools and or publics and how to address them. So joining me today to discuss this issue, we have Gail Santy, the director of CKLS.
Hi.
Collins, the youth services consultant. And is Christie? Yeah, Christie, there she is. Christie Snyder, the school libraries consultant. And I am Maribeth Shafer, the assistant director and general consultant for CKLS. Thank you for joining us today. Who wants to kick it off, ladies?
Well, I think we should start with new challenges that might be going on, updates on current challenges, and just kind of bring everybody up to speed on what's going across the country within Kansas since our first webinar in January. We have had a challenge at the high school level in Salina. Outside of Kansas, we know things are going on in Colorado, Arizona, Iowa, Illinois, just all around the country, really. Within Central Kansas Library System, we've had challenges at Great Bend and Ellsworth. Both of those are schools. Both of those challenges just sort of died out over the Christmas holidays, and nothing has really come of them since then. But Salina is alive and kicking, and they are, as Maribeth pointed out, they're pushing hard. Christie, do you want to talk about that challenge? Are you yeah, you're prepared.
The Salina one?
Yes, please.
Have you guys read anything about it? Yeah, it's been in the news. The book is Patty the Blue.
All boys aren't blue.
All boys aren't blue. And Patty is started to read it. And she said it's pretty deep, but I've been really proud of how Salina has handled it. They have a policy in place. They are using it. And it seems that all the administrators are on board. They have backed that policy. And it looks like it's going to go forward. It's a group, a Baptist church, I believe, and one parent. They haven't really read the book the way it's been reported.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in the middle of things, and it looks like it's being handled well. They did contact ALA and let them know that it was being challenged. So they've got the support of that group as well. So yeah, they are kind of a model for our other schools here to handle it.
Now, of course, I'm not in the know on this, but from what I've read in the paper, there have been direct quotes from the people who are bringing the challenge, and it doesn't sound like they've read it in full. They're only referring to certain parts. A good challenge or reconsideration form is going to have a check mark on it that says, did you read this book in whole, or did you just read parts of it, or did you view this in whole? Jessica Russell says in the chat that she read it and a lot of people would benefit from it. And Amy, who is joining us from Hamilton County Library, says that she completely services and supports their K through 12 school district. They're all on the same block. So you want to make sure you've got those challenge forms in place and those reconsideration forms. And it may be that you've got them for school and public as well. So the things are really kicking up in Kansas, in central Kansas. This is the third one. And we have 16 counties, so things are kicking up. If your library doesn't have a current collection management policy with reconsideration and a reconsideration form in it, please send it to CKLS, and Maribeth and Christie and I'll help you with that. And you can get that approved by your board. Without that policy in place, you have no safety net. It's really scary right now not to have that.
We had Nita Butler and Tommy Reese in the La Crosse School District. They went ahead and looked at theirs and revamped it. And Anita let us know today it went to the school board and they supported it. So that is a big win for that little district. And I'm really proud of those gals that they followed it through. And so that's great.
Those school librarians are paid as paraprofessionals, like most of the school librarians across Kansas. And so we're so proud and pleased to be able to offer them the support. And I know we were all clapping when we got the email. It was wonderful. So at any point, if you have any questions, type it in the chat or unmute yourself and jump on. That's the reason we're here, is to help you and answer your questions.
I do have one in the chat. I was going to save it for later, but we've kind of already touched on it, so I'm going to bring it up. When it comes to the reconsideration challenge process, after the paperwork is filled out and submitted, and when headed to the board for review, is there a guideline or form to help the board go through the process, just like there are forms available to help guide the board through employee reviews, etc.?
I don't think there is a procedure anywhere on how to do that.
Usually,
go ahead.
I think usually you'll go through the reconsideration form that's filled out. And I don't know of anywhere this is written down, but as the librarian, it's your job to have several different reviews of the book, different sources, so they can see that, to get a copy of the book, interlibrary loan, so each member of the committee can read it. You don't want to just do this all in 1 week or 1 day. You want to say, we will carefully consider this and do our homework. And then as a committee, you're really going to have to decide, I would want probably the Library Bill of Rights, a discussion within that reconsideration committee to explain why we go through all this.
On the ALA page, and I'll pop that in the chat right now. Just a minute. They do kind of suss it out a little bit, the procedures for handling it. And then they have an example for a school library for handling it. The complainant is required to submit the form within 10 business days. They should be offered a packet of material, which includes the library's mission state, selection policy, request for reconsideration form, and the Library Bill of Rights. If they're not happy with that, then they need to submit the form to the principal. If that's not submitted within 10 business days, the matter is considered closed. That's a new one. When the principal receives the form, they should notify and provide a copy of the reconsideration form to the superintendent, school library advisory committee or the reconsideration committee, the school librarian, and the school library department director, which I think that's what they're going to consider the committee. The book will remain on the shelves and in circulation during that time. They're going to appoint a committee by the principal consisting of a teacher, building level administrator, school librarian, reading or language arts specialist, member of the community. They're going to secure copies and the committee will read them in full. The school librarian will provide the ruling committee with a short formal intellectual freedom training that includes a packet of material. CKLS can help you with these things. and get copies. They should read it, should schedule a reconsideration after the principal receives it. And it goes on to say what the committee should do and how they should do it and what happens at the local and district level. It's pretty extensive. And so we want you to go ahead and read that, copy down that link, and you can go there for that. That's a really good procedure. There's a difference between policy and procedure. Procedure is approved by the library board. It is an official document. Procedure is what you do to make the policy happen, and that's not necessarily approved by the board. In some instances, and this one, that would be actually a good procedure to have approved by the board, so they all know.
So Gail, it's been requested that we come up with some kind of guideline or printable packet that kind of has these things
Will do.
together, or at least a checklist, something that helps guide them through the process.
Yep.
Thank you. I did put at the beginning of the chat, it's House Bill 2662. And it's the establishment of the Parents' Bill of Rights and Academics Transparency Act. Now, it's not specifically on book challenges, but it is kind of a tangent from it or connected to it. To establish parent transparency portals to provide information on materials that are used or made available in schools, removing the affirmative defense for schools for the crime of promotion to minors of material that is harmful to minors, and prohibiting schools from non-renewing a teacher's contract for refusing to teach against certain beliefs or practices. What's not said in that brief description of the bill subject is that it would require schools to post their full curriculum lesson plans the year, like before the year starts. And I think part of that bill also includes listing all materials that are available. So that would be listing all library materials.
I would also say, and I'll type that in, Senate Bill 496 is something similar, and it's been introduced on the Senate side. I haven't been able to finish reading it this morning, but it's talking a lot about the parents' rights, and that the parents should have access to everything. They guarantee a parent's right to be involved, and what should happen. They have the right to inspect any records, health or educational, object to any learning material on the basis that such material or activity harms the child or impairs the parent's firmly held beliefs, values, or principles, and withdraw the child from the activity, class, or program. Challenge the material or educational benefit of any book, magazine, or any other material available to students in the school library, such that a successful challenge results in the removal of the book, magazine, or article from the school. I'm going to paste that in because that's
I'll see if I can find a link. There was, go ahead.
Has any of the schools, have your administration brought this to your attention? Have they told you how they would like it be, how to handle this? Who, you know, what do they want us to say to our legislators? Has anybody given you that?
I've not heard anything.
I am sending a letter out to all of our school district superintendents and or an email and ask that question. How can we support you with these bills coming through? What do you want us to say? Gail, you sent us this, or me this morning. What did that say? It was perfect.
Oh, it was perfect. It was something snarky, but perfect. It was like asking a teacher to fill out a child's entire curriculum for the year is like asking a doctor to determine how they're gonna treat the patient before they've even seen them, something like that.
Yeah.
Very good.
Also, I can forward that to you guys, but yeah, it's a little ridiculous, isn't it? That
it is, especially where it results, any successful challenge results in the removal of the book, magazine, or material from the school. that's most always the case
Yes, it
anyway.
will be
It
at the
just
library.
doesn't need to be here. A successful
But
challenge,
James
who's
sounds really
determining what
amazing.
successful is? If you're not talking, please mute your mic. Background noises make it tricky. So how do you know what's going on? How are you finding information? Please chime in. That'll be helpful to us.
Well, Gail, I can talk about, I mean, sitting on the Governmental Affairs Committee and getting Catherine's weekly or daily updates almost. I mean, if nothing else, sometimes I'm really quiet in the meetings, but it's given me an opportunity. And for those of you that don't know me, I know a couple of us from the Southwest Kansas Library System on here today. And thank you for allowing us to sit in on this, because this whole reconsideration thing, I mean, I know it's always been around, but it seems like it's going full steam ahead. And my unique situation, I am incredibly concerned if we don't get a better policy. We have one, but we need a better one. But just reading Salina's, how that's moved and continues to stay at the forefront of the Board of Education meetings and with the parent and the newspaper. But that's where I'm getting things. It's just kind of newspaper feeds here and there. So I think just all of us having the conversation is huge, because that keeps us learning from each other on maybe how to handle it better the next time or before it gets worse.
Thank you, Amy. The Kansas Library Association has formed an informal committee that is looking at intellectual freedom requests and challenges. And they have some guidelines, what they believe should happen. And it probably will become a real committee, a sanctioned committee. They would like to see one source for information about what's going on and where to find tools to help you. What they suggest is that the systems push this information out to the libraries, and they're talking about maybe on the main system website to have information on that. CKLS has a LibGuide on intellectual freedom, and Maribeth just posted a link to it. And so that is a resource that's available. There are samples there that contain the necessary components of a good collection management policy. Let's see, if you are on Ken Libel, and I think everybody here should be, Catherine is the chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee, the GAC committee right now, and she's going to be pushing out a call for advocacy every month. And the month this year, the call this month is to have you send an email and introduce yourself to your elected officials and include, oh, I don't know if I've got it. I had a board meeting last night. You know how that can go. This, libraries are essential, and the online database cost avoidance, and add in what you got for your infographic from the state library. That's a really super easy way to send an email or a letter, but they need to hear from you more now than ever before. And if you need help crafting an intro, I'd suggest contact your system. They're going to be able to help you with that.
I'm going to see if I can find that sheet that you just put up.
Okay. I know it came
have
out
it
in
in
an email from
Yeah.
Catherine.
And I saw it before the session, but now I can't find it, of course.
Of course.
Got it, Maribeth. I'll post it.
Okay, thank you.
Some
Thank
of
you.
the questions that Christie got last time is, where do I find good reviews without subscribing to the expensive magazines? Ladies, hit it.
Okay. If you are ordering from Ingram, they have those with the book. When you're looking for the book, it is there. So if you've bought a book and want to know what the reviews are saying about it, you've already got it in your collection, you can still go back into Ingram and find it. There are several magazines, Book List, School Library Journal, Kirkus Review,
Boya.
Voya, that will look at children's literature. And I'll tuck those in the folder we've started. You can also, Novelist Plus from the State Library also includes those reviews. So you don't have to have the magazine.
Right.
If you aren't finding it, you can sure let us know and we'll find it for you. And we do get a copy of almost all of those magazines here at CKLS. But those are the two easiest for you to find those reviews.
And another source, that those reviews for the most part are right on Amazon as well. So you can, yes, there you go. We look at Ingram, Goodreads, and Amazon. Now, Goodreads is mostly by peers and Amazon can be by peers. So you want to look for those professional reviews in particular if you get a challenge. And they're going to talk about things like the literary merit and what qualities in the book make it a good addition to a library collection or to a school library collection in particular. The Amazon and Goodreads reviews may give you deeper insight into how people are reacting to the book. So you've got a couple of ways to go there.
I kind of think of the Amazon and the Goodreads reviews, kind of like your testimonials. You know, you ask your patrons, how did summer library go, and they give those, and that's what I think the Goodreads and Amazon reviews are good for those personal anecdotal stories that really help. But you also need to have those professional reviews as well.
Right. And I believe that Baker and Taylor also has them. If you don't, or place your orders through Ingram, Baker and Taylor will have those as well. They buy those reviews from the magazines. So you don't need to double spend your money there.
Okay.
We're whipping along. I think it's important. I said it once and I'm going to say it again. And if you've ever been to a trustee training with me, you know I harp on this a lot. It's important to know the difference between policy and procedure, especially for something like this. When I do trustee training and I'm talking about library policies and why it's important for library boards to create policies, I talk about the fact that the best policies are made with the library board on one hand and the school librarian or the public librarian shaking hands together like this. It's like the victory, yay. And both have input into the policies. Only the board has the authorization to make the policies, and that authorization comes from Kansas statute. The board, some boards may not want to. They'll say, we don't need that, or that's not going to happen in our small town. And I honestly think that COVID may have opened people's eyes on that, because it's going to happen, and it's going to happen in your small town. I think that library policies are a safety net. And I explain it like this: your library staff, your frontline staff, they're out there walking a tightrope every single day. They're like the trapeze artists of the library. The library policy is that safety net. So we know if they slip or the equipment is faulty, that net is going to catch them and save them. And that's what a library policy is to me. The procedure is different. If your library's policy is that we collect 5 cents a day for fines on overdue materials, the procedure might not be written down anywhere in a book, but it might still. And the procedure would say, we take pennies, or we take dimes and give change, or they have to pay it all at once, or they can pay it off 1 cent at a time, or they can work in the library, dusting shelves to pay off that fine. The procedure is how you implement the policy, and that's 100% on the library director and the library staff, especially for things like challenges. You need to practice the procedure with library staff. Anybody who works the circulation desk needs to practice this procedure. And the reason for this is, if I come in and I'm angry, and we know that when people are angry, they're suddenly twice the size of normal, they turn to the Hulk in size, and you're a meek-mannered librarian, you're going to go into panic mode. You're going to freeze. You're not going to be comfortable saying the right things, even if you know. You need to practice this. You're going to use scripted language, and you're going to take a breath, and you're going to know what to do. Or you're going to take a breath and pull out that procedure, and you can read it through. But that way, you've got your safety net. Patty, what do you want to say about this topic? I know surely you have something to say.
Oh, I have nothing to say on this topic, Gail. Actually, on the topic as a whole, but regarding policy and procedure, Gail mentioned the word scripted language, and it's finding your place. And if you're lucky enough to have someone else to practice with, and even if you're a one-person library, use a board member or a family member that you can trust, but practicing it a few times and letting the other person become increasingly annoying, or maybe even a little bit outraged, so you're ready when it comes, because we know that the very first thing that happens is our face gets flushed and we pull back a little bit, and then we start to stutter. And so taking that time to practice is key. And as Gail said, it's okay to read it. And you've already asked for some, you've already asked for us to create a document for you to help you through these steps. And if you have to use that document and that little card of how to get started, that's completely okay. And when that happens, if you say, I want to make sure that I get all the information correct and make sure that you get everything that you need to know out of our conversation. If you're able to say that, then you can read off the card and nobody's going to look at you like you don't know anything, because you're making sure that you're careful and you're letting them know that.
You're also letting them know that you consider what they're bringing to you very important. And you want to make sure that they get all the information they need because they are concerned.
One key I will caution you against, and it's a gut reaction, is not using the words calm down. Because if you think about it, when you tell your child or your student to calm down, what happens? We all know that reaction that we get when someone says that. And when you're standing at that desk and dealing with this person who's already upset or angry, or perhaps tossed a book at you and said, this is a dirty book, or why did you spend taxpayer money on it, or any number of things, you're already on guard. And so our reaction is either to slink back or to fight back. And we kind of have to be in the middle here.
So I do have a question in the chat. How would you get a volunteer to handle the situation if a patron comes in about challenging a book? Should how it is handled be in procedure book or volunteer guideline book? Is there examples of scripted language? I think this could be easy scripted language for volunteers. When a patron comes in with anything that would be above their pay grade as a volunteer, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I will let the librarian know. And they would get contact information in that. That's as far as a volunteer can be expected to take it.
Yes. I will let the director know, would you please write down your name and contact information, and I will make sure they get this, and they will get back to you as soon as they're back in the library. You might also ask them to just write down what your concern is.
It's responsive. It's telling them that they hear that they're having a complaint, and also letting them know that I'm not the person that can handle that, but I'm going to make sure that the person that can is going to get in touch with you. So there, it shouldn't feel, everybody's different, but it shouldn't feel like you're passing the buck. It should be like,
Right.
I'm taking this off your shoulders and I'm putting this in the hands of the person that can
Mhm.
handle it.
This is Patty again. I'm going to add, sometimes that volunteer is a board member. And so that reaction might be, well, aren't you on the board? And so there may have to be in that script for that volunteer, it may say, yes, I'm on the board. I will take this to the library director. Because if you say the words, I'm taking this to the library director, one, they think they've gotten farther than, because it will go to the library director in its due process. But skipping over the librarian and taking something to the library director is where you get into lots and lots of trouble. So make sure that your volunteer says, I will take it to the librarian.
This is Gail, and Patty said lots and lots of trouble. I'm going to say one hell of a mess. And the reason for this is corporate body. When a board member acts alone, they can get in big trouble. No longer, they can be sued as an individual. When a board acts as a corporate body, that means all of them together, they cannot be sued as individuals. The board can be sued as a whole, but not each individual. A board member staffing the desk, which is very common in CKLS, especially on days like summer library program, should never say, yes, I'm a board member and here's what you should do with that, because they're stepping out of that role as corporate body. Because when they're in that role, they're in the role of library volunteer, not board member. And so that's how you might explain that to the board. When you explain to them that when you operate as an individual, you open yourself up to be sued as an individual. And that's very important for board members to know, especially reconsiderations are very contentious and can be very litigious. And so that's why we're all nervous about what language we're going to use. We know we need to mind our P's and Q's. So you want to be sure and let your board members know that as well. And we all have volunteers who've been here at the library, working at the library longer than we have. We want them to know that this is an instance where they definitely want to refer it to the library director. Even if they know what the policy and the procedure are, they don't need to bear the responsibility of this. That is what the director and the board are there for.
So we do have a question, and Gail answered it in the chat about scripted language.
Mhm.
And when we say scripted language, it's not necessarily where you go into a file somewhere and pull it out, but it's pre-planned,
Mhm.
Dialogue.
And practiced.
And practice. Yes, some forms should be written down somewhere if you have that kind of procedural handbook, but it's really having those situations, those scenarios pre-planned so that you know how to respond. I'm one that does this a lot in my head. And so when conversations don't go the way I think they will, it really throws me off. But what it is knowing that when somebody comes in and says, I don't think this book should be on your shelf, your staff know how to handle it.
Right.
They have the,
So I would say,
in all the steps.
if you're the patron and you come in and you say, I don't think this, you say what you're going to say, and I'll be the person behind the desk, not the director. Let's do it right now. Let's
I'm
play.
sorry. I was reading the chat and I was like, wait, what? I don't think that this book, what do I have here? Did you hear what Eddie Gein done? Should be on your shelf. It's about the real true story about Psycho. I don't think it should be on your shelf.
Oh, I see. I'm going to have you write your name down here and your contact information, and I'll make sure that the library director gets in touch with you about this. It may take a couple of days, but I know that the director will call you. They'll take this request very seriously. Patty,
What are you doing
say?
about it now? What are you going
Right.
to do about it now?
Right. Patty, what would you say? Because what she says is going to be different than ours. And when CKLS gives you the scripted language, you're going to have to put it in your own words, or you're never going to be confident. Go ahead. Angel, you're unmuted. Can you mute yourself, please?
I got her.
Okay, Patty, what would you say?
I appreciate your
Appreciate it.
concern. I will be happy to take your information down and share this information with our library director. I promise that you will hear from someone within a week. And if you have further questions, this is my name, and you're welcome to call me back, and I'll make certain that your information gets to our library director.
So you see, we have our scripted language, but neither one of us have practiced with what are you going to do right now? And that's something that we would need to practice with so we get a little more comfortable. Oh, Maribeth, you're muted now.
You also have to, practice what happens if the person keeps interrupting you. And that's something that's going to happen, whether it's a book challenge or not, because book challenges are emotional. So the person, even if they come in calm, they're going to be, their heart's going to be racing. They're wanting, it's taken them a lot to bring this up. They're being brave, standing up for what they think is right. And so you also have to practice, have whoever you're practicing with be as, I'm not going to say, be as aggressive as they can be. Think of the most ornery 5-year-old that just has a million questions to ask and just keep going, and then have somebody that's maybe the grumpiest man down the street and practice as them. So you kind of get that rehearsal with different personality types. And so it's not just the kind person says, you need to take this off your shelf, please. It's more of what can we, practice with those harder to deal with personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
tell
Gail.
I've been doing, hold on, Patty. I've been doing this for a while, and I've had plenty of challenges. And I'll tell you that every single time I instantly turn into a hot, sweaty mess. Luckily, I don't cry, but
I would
hot,
cry.
sweaty mess.
I cry.
I'm gonna give you my very first one. I was 23 years old, standing at a circ desk at a lunch hour. This sweet old lady who came in every Wednesday to get her new books came in and I mean, didn't drop timely, but threw a book on the desk, slapped it on the desk and says, "This is a dirty book." And she stood there and waited for me to respond. What do you do?
Right. And that is it. What do you do?
Gail, what do you
what do
say?
I do. Oh goodness, it sounds like you're really upset about this book. Was there any part in particular you didn't like, or do you object to the whole book? To me, it's easier to deal with the ladies, the kindly ladies. And I would, based on what that patron says, then you go from there. She could say there's fornication and there's foul language and just all kinds of things. And so then at that point, what you say over the desk can often defuse a challenge, but sometimes it doesn't. And so I would at that point, I would say something like, well, we're a public library, and it's our responsibility to have something for everybody to read in the library. And while that book might not be for you, I'm sure I can help you find some books that are more along the lines of something you would enjoy.
And I will
That might
share,
work.
my first challenge book. It was, I was working in my hometown library. I helped my grandma pick out a book. It was short stories. And I went to visit them later, and both grandma and grandpa sat me down and told me that book should not be in the library. They said, because it says it has GD in it. And I said, oh, well, I didn't know it was in there, but thank you for sharing it with me. And they're like, well, I don't think it should be in the library at all. And I said, well, would you like us to send an official challenge? Oh, no, I think you should just take it off the shelves. And, I explained the process and all this stuff and kept going. And I go, you have every right to not want to read this book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at them and said, and I know that you can't always do this, but I looked at them and said, but you don't have the right to tell everybody else in town that you can't read this book. And when I said it like that, something clicked, and they were just like, and so I said, do you want to make this a challenge? And they're like, no, I think it's okay. And it was a small branch library. So the book rotated to another library in a few weeks, and it was okay. But I think also having that personal touch that I was able to do, because they were my grandparents, but also because they're my grandparents, they're an authority figure. It took a little bit of, I want to hear them. I want them to know that I'm being respectful for them. And I was, but I could also say, you know, sometimes you have to say, you know, this part of you, what you're saying is right, but have you considered this part as well? And sometimes that helps as well.
Are you going to go back to the chat for any questions we may have seen?
Yes, Barb is asking, is there a staff or board insurance for lawsuits?
No, not really. What the board usually, the library usually carries insurance on anyone who handles money. So that would of course be the position of the treasurer. Sometimes they have insurance on the library director because they handle money. Most library boards don't have, nor could they afford, insurance for situations like this. And that's one of the reasons that we're having this conversation today, is so that we can help you get all of your ducks in a row to avoid that as much as possible. And I know that seems like a pat answer, but seriously, the most important thing you can do is send in your policies for a policy audit and get those procedures in place and practice that scripted language for anybody who works with the public at the library. Most challenges don't go any further than the director's office. If the director has those things in place, they know what to say and how to say it. One of the things that CKLS is doing in May, at the business meeting in May, is we're having a lot of wonderful, wonderful CE about crucial conversations and how to have those hard conversations with your grandparents if they're one of your patrons, or what language and script and body language to use if you're having a difficult conversation with a patron.
We do have
So I'd
another
encourage
comment,
you to come.
and it's I have that happen with a patron quite a bit, and I've told her that I'd move it to general fiction instead of inspiration, and that seems to help. And sometimes, you know, the patron wants to be heard out, and then you'll ask them, you know, what kind of resolution would you see? And sometimes it's just like, well, I don't think it should be shelved here. It should be shelved here. And usually those are most of the resolutions that you're going to find, but you need to make sure that those changes follow your policies.
Yes, Patty, and then me.
So Gail's probably going to say the same thing I am. What if it's a children's book? Because our bodies ourselves,
Everybody
mommy
poops.
laid an egg, everybody poops. There's all kinds of books that, I mean, and my very first actual book challenge with the whole 9 yards was Is Everyone Poops? And I wrote about it in a recent newsletter. And that book, the person wanted it moved to the adult area or thrown out completely. They didn't give another option because they didn't think it belonged in the children's room.
Well, just because you hear out there what they would like to see doesn't mean that that's what you have to do.
Right. And especially where it happens to be involving something that was put in the inspirational section. That was one of my first challenges here at CKLS. We used to have the Christian cross stickers as our inspirational books. And as soon as I got here, we changed it to the dove. Inspirational doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be Christian, and Christian doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be your religion or those you approve of. Inspirational books come from all religions, and even from no religions. They're just a gentler, kinder read. And I believe we do our patrons a grave disservice if we use that cross as an inspirational thing. It sets ourselves up for failure.
All right, we have
Okay.
about 15 minutes left. What other questions do you have for us? Richard?
Nope. What is CKLS doing?
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes,
We
Richard.
can hear you.
Okay, just comment, we talked about scripted languages and everything like that. One of the things that I did at Kearney County Library was I developed a generic form for the patron to fill out. This actually helped the staff, also the director, to kind of have that step back, says, yes, we understand you're concerned, to take this serious. We do need you to fill out this form. You can either do it here at the library, or if you're welcome to take it home, you can either mail it back or bring it back, and then we'll go into considerations, and then I would explain the process. But just having that form where the staff or I could just turn around and say, okay, we can handle that for you. Let me get you a form so you can fill this out for us. That way it's on record. We know what we need to do and look at. That alleviated a lot of stress for the staff. Also alleviated a little bit of stress for me, because I had that as a little bit of a barrier so that I could have them go fill that out. And sometimes if they were willing, I would say, could you leave me the book so I can get started on looking at this for you? And if they would, I would, but if they didn't, that's fine too. And that kind of alleviated some of the stress of, how am I going to talk to this person? You just pretty much try to be empathetic, not sympathetic, but empathetic. And we gave them that form. And most times that the form actually diffused a lot of those right away, because nobody wants to put it on an official document. So that's what we did at Kearney County, and that might save with some of the scripted language and trying to remember some of that stuff.
Mhm.
If you already have that form that a staff could just take out of a binder and hand to them to fill out.
One of the things that I don't think we do as often as we need to in Kansas is that if anyone has a patron fill out a reconsideration form, even if it goes no further than that, they fill it out and then they're fine and they leave it be. We need to report those as book challenges. That's something that we do a very poor job of. You can report that directly to the American Library Association Office of Intellectual Freedom, or if you report that to your system, they can probably, I mean, we'll pass that on, and I'm pretty sure most of the other systems would as well. We need to keep track of those things, because what that means then is that that Office of Intellectual Freedom, the OIF, can then put out a bulletin that says, hey, this is happening in central Kansas, so that everybody else can be aware of it and before it becomes a reality for them. Yeah. So CKLS has a LibGuide on intellectual freedom. We've been requested to make a packet of materials, and we will get that done very shortly. And we are reporting out to you things that are happening as we see them in real time. And then we are also reporting things to the American Library Association. And we're reviewing policy. So that's what we're doing for you. If you need something where it's a little more than that, don't hesitate to get in touch with anybody at CKLS and we'll work with you on that.
This is Patty. One thing that we most often think of physical materials being challenged in libraries, but it goes beyond just your books and your DVDs. It can go on to who's using the meeting room. If someone feels like their privacy has been violated by using their full name in something, or a conversation being had over the desk where their name was mentioned. Internet related things. So we immediately go to, they're taking away our books, but we have to think bigger, because this issue is bigger than the books that are being talked about today.
Connie, we'll send out information about that coming up soon. We'll send it out to the Google group. Has this conversation helped you today? Please speak or type. We need to know if we're taking the right path for you.
I think another thing we probably can do for our librarians is to connect them with their legislators. A simple, quick link that will send you to who you have. And don't forget your Board of Education, Kansas Board of Education, your local board. Get them involved as well.
if your legislators don't hear from you and hear your well-reasoned and educated concerns about these legislative bodies of work that are rolling through Topeka right now, they're going to assume that you're hunky-dory and everything's fine with you. They need to hear that, no, you don't support this because here's why. When one person is allowed to take away, allowed to exercise their choice, it removes my choice of my freedom of choice as well. And that's not right. I'm glad that the people who chimed in, that it was helpful to you. If at any point after this Tuesdays with CKLS, if you remember something else you had a question about, or you might need more help, don't hesitate to get in touch with us, please.
We will, of course, keep monitoring the situation and keeping track of challenges that happen in our area. And we may decide to do more of these book challenge / reconsideration webinars. So this is the second one we've had this year. And I think this is going to be the hot topic of the year. So we will work to make those happen as needed. When we're going to have another one, we will let you know as soon in advance as possible. But look for those updates at the CKLS Google groups, because we will send those out. And this has been recorded, so I'll make sure to send the archive out as well later today, or probably it'll be on Thursday. I have more meetings after this today.
And later this year, we will be talking about how selection is also a form of self-censorship. So we're going to talk about how to select materials and to try to be as fair and open and represent your community as you purchase. So we're not done talking.
No, someone once at a conference told me that they remembered something I said, and they said it to themselves every day. And it's, if you're not causing a little trouble, you're not doing a good job. And then they changed it around to say that something along the fact that if you're not purchasing material and you can't think of at least one person something might offend, you need to rethink what you're buying. We don't buy things that are going to always keep the peace. We have to buy things that will represent all viewpoints, all choices in life. And that might not be comfortable for us. One of the things we'll talk about at that reader's advisory, I think is what it's called, I'm not sure, is how to hunt down those things that might be out of your comfort zone or out of your reading circle, and how to know when it's going to be of value and add to your library. I'm getting excited about that one. I am.
Yeah. And one of the parts about that collection reader's advisory class is looking at your collection and making sure that you're representing your community and not yourself or your board. I know I've worked really, really hard to the point where I haven't bought things because I didn't want it to look like it was Patty buying. So to try to get a well-rounded collection is a difficult thing, but we know you're all at that challenge.
And it's also hard to know if what you're selecting is good if it's not something you're familiar with. You know, you're buying outside your comfort zone. So that's why those reviews and other professional publications will help with that. You can't read every book in your library. You can't read everything that's on the internet. Why would you want to? But you can use the resources that we have and the skills that we have as librarians to evaluate and make a judgment call.
Yeah. Okay, last call for questions. We only have 5 minutes left.
So there is in the chat, I think there was maybe a challenge about Yellowstone that carried over into 1883 about this. And okay, so but after all the protests, there was a whole part of one of the shows about this, and now it is more realistic level. So I'm not sure if it was a challenge or what was going on there. But Sarah's then sharing that we are working on a diversity workshop in Southwest Kansas Library System and how to work through your collection and looking at it from a diversity standpoint. That's wonderful, Sarah. I'm hoping when you get that workshop up, you'll let us know. We may we may tag along. We may join you to look at your, to watch your workshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
The hardest part for us is to be quiet like a teacher and wait for the questions.
I am going to go ahead and stop recording, but we're going to stay on.